Your alarm goes off. Before your feet even hit the floor, your hand is already on your phone. 30 minutes later, you're still in bed, overwhelmed, and you haven't had a single original thought. Sound familiar? This is one of the quietest signs of a dulled mind. Not because scrolling is evil, because you just handed the sharpest window of your entire day to strangers who don't know your name. The first hour is when your brain is most flexible, most creative, most capable of direction. Sharper minds use it to think, plan, or simply breathe. Weaker habits fill every silence on reflex. And that reflex, repeated every single morning, shapes more of your life than you'd like to admit. Then there's multitasking as a personality trait. You've met this person, you might be this person. 17 browser tabs open, 2 conversations running at once, a podcast in the background, a half-written email sitting in drafts since Tuesday. They call it productivity. They wear it like armor. I work better with noise. I get more done when I'm juggling. The truth? They don't. Nobody does. The brain isn't wired for it. Neuroscience is clear on this. The brain doesn't multitask. It switches, rapidly, between tasks, and every switch costs real processing power, accuracy drops, depth disappears. The quality of every task falls the moment attention splits. You're not doing 2 things well. You're doing 4 things badly and feeling very busy about it. Every open tab is a piece of your focus leaking somewhere it doesn't belong. Sharp minds pick one thing, go deep, finish it, move on. Weaker patterns confuse motion with progress. They mistake feeling overwhelmed for working hard. If your whole approach to the day is built around looking busy rather than producing something real, that isn't a work style. It's a performance of one. Scatter is not output. It never was. Next, never finishing anything. There's a certain person who starts everything and completes nothing. The guitar in the corner, played hard for 3 weeks, untouched since. The book with the bookmark permanently wedged at page 40. The online course, half done, quietly expiring next month. The business idea announced to friends with real excitement, then never mentioned again. Starting feels good because dopamine fires when something new begins. But that rush fades fast. And without the discipline to push through the boring middle, people quit and chase the next beginning. The cycle repeats. Nothing gets built. Sharp minds understand that the middle is where everything is decided. It's where skill develops. It's where most people quietly give up. Weaker habits are addicted to beginnings. Enthusiasm gets mistaken for aptitude. Novelty gets mistaken for progress. Anyone can start. The real question is whether you finish. If your life is filling up with almost finished things, dropped projects, abandoned plans, half-read books stacked on the nightstand, the question isn't why you started. It's why the finish line keeps disappearing. Finishing is a discipline. Most people never develop it. Reacting before thinking. Picture the person who replies before they've read the full message. They hear half a sentence in a meeting, and they're already arguing back. They see a headline, and they're outraged before checking if the story is even real. Someone disagrees with them mildly, suddenly they're defensive, heated, and done listening. This isn't passion. It isn't confidence. It's poor impulse control. And psychologists link it directly to weaker cognitive performance. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for measured response, is supposed to pump the brakes. It asks, is my interpretation right? Is this the right reaction? Right now? When that system is ignored, responses happen on reflex instead of reasoning. Sharp minds pause. They reread the message. They wait a beat. They ask one clarifying question before forming a verdict, because they know the first interpretation is often wrong. The quickest voice in the room is rarely the clearest mind in it. Pause. Form the thought. Then speak. Never reading anything. Ever. This isn't about books specifically. It's about the person who has quietly rebuilt their entire information diet to avoid anything that takes more than 30 seconds to read. News? There's a clip for that. Complicated topic? Somebody made a short video. Long article? They'll wait for a summary in the comments. It feels efficient? It isn't. Reading, real reading, not captions, builds vocabulary, strengthens working memory, and trains the brain to hold complex ideas long enough to evaluate them. Passive video consumption does the opposite. It delivers pre-digested conclusions with the reasoning stripped out. The brain slowly learns to accept whatever arrives instead of questioning it. Sharp minds read because it's exercise. Weaker habits avoid reading the way people avoid the gym, not because they can't, but because nothing's forcing them and it feels uncomfortable. Choosing not to read is choosing to live inside someone else's summary of the world. Capacity shrinks. Thinking gets softer. If your brain hasn't followed a sustained argument from start to finish in months, that isn't busyness. That's neglect. And neglect has a predictable ending. Complaining as a default mode. Some people narrate every inconvenience out loud all day long. The coffee was wrong. The commute added 4 minutes. A colleague said something mildly annoying. The weather didn't cooperate with plans that weren't solid to begin with. And on, morning to night, a live commentary on everything that isn't going their way. Venting sometimes is human. But when complaining becomes the reflex for any friction, something else is happening. Complaining is mental outsourcing. Instead of identifying the problem and asking what can actually change, the brain dumps the discomfort into the air and moves on, feeling lighter while nothing gets solved. Psychologists say this pattern reinforces passivity. The more problems get verbalized without being addressed, the more the brain starts treating the talking as the solution. Sharp minds notice friction and immediately ask what can be adjusted. Chronic complainers aren't experiencing more difficulty than everyone else, they're just processing less of it. The problem doesn't care how eloquently you described it. It's still there, and it will stay there until someone does something about it. Accepting things without asking why. There's a kind of passivity that doesn't look passive at all. It looks cooperative, easygoing, low maintenance. The person who never questions their doctor's advice, their bank's fees, their employer's policies, or the price they were just quoted. They nod, accept, and move on. That isn't patience. It's intellectual surrender. The world is full of systems that count on you not asking questions. Psychologists link the habit of uncritical acceptance to something called low need for cognition, a clinical way of saying someone doesn't enjoy the effort of thinking. Sharp minds treat why as a reflex. They don't swallow the first explanation just because it came from someone with a title. Weaker habits say yes by default and call it being agreeable. Instructions are supposed to prompt your thinking, not replace it. Eating without noticing anything. Most people hit the afternoon crash and blame the day. A long meeting, a bad night of sleep, a stressful morning. They never once consider that they ate a bag of chips and a sugary drink for lunch and are genuinely surprised their brain stopped working 2 hours later. The link between diet and cognitive function is well documented. What you eat directly affects how clearly you think, how long you can focus, and how fast your mood falls apart. Sharp minds notice patterns. They see the connection between bad food and foggy afternoons, and they adjust. Weaker habits make the same lunch choice tomorrow and blame something else again. If you never connect what you put in to how you perform, you're missing the most obvious cause and effect in your entire day. Procrastinating until crisis is the only motivator. You've heard someone say they work best under pressure. What they actually mean, what they haven't admitted, is that they only work under pressure. The assignment with 3 weeks of runway gets started the night before. The bill that could have been handled quietly becomes a full situation because someone waited until the third notice arrived. This isn't a productivity style. It's a self-regulation problem. Research ties chronic procrastination directly to poor impulse control and a low tolerance for discomfort, the same factors that predict lower performance almost everywhere in life. Sharp minds build habits to prevent emergencies. They start things before the fire. Weaker habits wait for the flames and call the scramble motivation. Crisis isn't a work style. It's evidence that planning never happened. Talking more than listening in every conversation. We've all been stuck with someone who isn't really listening. They nod while composing their next sentence. They interrupt because they've already decided what you meant before you finished. They leave every interaction having said a lot and absorbed nothing. This isn't charisma. It isn't confidence. It's a sign of a shallow mind. Listening isn't passive, it's cognitively expensive. It requires holding information, tracking context, and updating your understanding in real time. Sharp minds treat every conversation as a potential source of something they don't know. That attitude keeps them learning. Weaker habits treat conversation as performance a stage, not a classroom. There's a direct link between poor listening and weak comprehension. The loudest person in the room is usually the one growing the least in it. Blaming circumstances for every outcome. You've probably got a friend whose failures always have an outside author. The job didn't work out because the manager had it in for them. The relationship ended because the other person was impossible. The money ran out because the timing was wrong. At some point, the pattern stops being bad luck and starts being a worldview. Psychologists call this an external locus of control, the belief that outside forces, not your own choices, decide your life. Sharp minds ask, what could I have done differently? Weaker habits only ask, who do I blame? The universe isn't conspiring against anyone. It's just responding to what gets put in, and blaming it doesn't change the result. Repeating the same mistakes without curiosity. Some people have the exact same argument every year. The same financial problem resurfaces every 6 months. The same kind of conflict follows them from job to job, relationship to relationship. They always seem surprised. That's not just bad luck. Sharp minds debrief. When something goes wrong, they ask why not to punish themselves, but to find the variable that keeps producing the outcome. Weaker habits skip the step entirely. They move on without examining anything, which guarantees the same conditions produce the same result forever. If life keeps teaching you the same lesson, and you keep failing the test, the problem isn't the lesson. It's the refusal to study, obsessing over what strangers think. There's a version of self-consciousness that goes well past caring about your reputation. It's the person who rewrites a text 15 times before sending it to someone they barely know, who replays a conversation from 3 days ago, convinced they said something wrong, who picks what to wear, where to eat, and what to say based almost entirely on how it will look to people who won't remember the interaction by Thursday. This kind of constant social monitoring drains enormous cognitive energy, energy that could go toward actual goals. Sharp minds spend that attention on output. Weaker habits spend it managing an audience that wasn't watching to begin with. And finally, never reflecting. Just collapsing into the phone at the end of every single day. You know this person, you might be this person tonight. The day ends. They close the laptop, drop onto the couch, pick up the phone, and that's the debrief. Scroll. Episode, scroll. Sleep. No moment of sitting with what happened. No questions asked. No wondering what could have gone better. No processing, no journaling, no 5 quiet minutes of letting the brain catch up to the day it just lived through. Just content, end to end, until unconscious. Next morning, grab the phone, do it again in reverse. Sharp minds know reflection is how a day turns into knowledge. Without it, experience just piles up without becoming anything useful. Weaker habits don't debrief. They load the next video and call it relaxing. Every day the same, every year a little hazier than the last. The brain was always running. It just never actually arrived anywhere. Here's the thing though, Every habit on this list is a choice, which means the moment you catch yourself in one of them, you've already started doing something different. That quiet, noticing that pause before the reflex is where a sharper mind begins. Not tomorrow, not Monday, right now, in the silence after this sentence ends.